I stood in my downtown Seattle office on Monday morning, looking out at the rain-streaked windows while my sister's voice echoed in my mind. The pharmaceutical company I had built over 7 years occupied 3 floors of this building, and every inch represented sacrifice, sleepless nights, and decisions that cost me relationships. My beach house in Cannon Beach, Oregon, was supposed to be my sanctuary, the one place where the pressure of manufacturing life-saving medications could fade into the sound of waves. I'm moving in on Wednesday afternoon, Victoria had said yesterday at brunch, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her mimosa glass. Dad already gave me the final approval. My father sat beside her, avoiding my gaze as he had done for years. He nodded slowly, that familiar expression of indulgence crossing his weathered features. Victoria was 41, 12 years my senior, and had spent those extra years perfecting the art of manipulation. She smiled at me then, that winning smile that had convinced our father to fund her boutique clothing store, her yoga studio, and her artisanal candle business, all of which had failed within months. Alexandra built that house herself, I remembered saying quietly, referring to myself in third person as I sometimes did when anger threatened to overwhelm me. She designed it, financed it, and earned every dollar that paid for it. Dad had waved his hand dismissively. Family shares, sweetheart. You have so much already. Your sister needs stability right now. Her marriage just ended, and she needs somewhere peaceful to recover. Victoria's third marriage had indeed ended, though from what I gathered through mutual friends, she had been the one doing the leaving. Her husband had finally tired of supporting her endless ventures and lack of ambition. Now she wanted my beach house, the $2 million property I had purchased 18 months ago, as my reward for a particularly grueling year of navigating FDA approvals and pharmaceutical regulations. I turned from my office window and pulled out my phone. The security system I had installed 3 months ago was state-of-the-art, something I had added after Victoria mentioned during Christmas dinner that she often drove down to Cannon Beach to check on my property. I had found evidence of her visits, wine bottles in the recycling, different towels in the bathroom, my expensive skincare products nearly empty. She had a key from when I had briefly trusted her to water my plants during a 2-week trip to Switzerland for a medical conference. I opened the security app and began programming. Wednesday morning, 6 a.m., the system would activate fully. Motion sensing, trespassing recording, automatic police notification. My fingers moved quickly across the screen, setting up zones, sensitivity levels, and response protocols. The house would become a fortress, legally protecting my property with documented evidence of unauthorized entry. Tuesday arrived with its usual chaos of production meetings and quality control reviews. We were 3 weeks from launching a new anti-inflammatory medication, and every detail required my attention. My lead researcher, Bethany, presented data in the conference room while I divided my attention between her findings and my phone, where I monitored the security system's final calibrations. "Are you expecting trouble?" Bethany asked during a break, noticing my distraction. I glanced up at her concerned expression. "Family trouble. The kind that requires documentation." She nodded knowingly. Bethany had worked with me for 5 years and had witnessed enough of my family dynamics during company events to understand. My father had attended our last product launch, spending the entire evening telling investors how proud he was of Victoria's entrepreneurial spirit, while barely acknowledging the company I had built from nothing. That evening, I drove to my Seattle apartment and packed a small bag. Wednesday would require my presence in Cannon Beach, though not in the way Victoria expected. I had booked a room at a small inn 2 miles from my house, a place with reliable Wi-Fi and a clear view of my phone screen. I would watch everything unfold from a safe distance, documented and legal. My phone rang near midnight. Dad's name appeared on the screen. "Alexandra, honey, I need you to give Victoria the new security code," he said, without preamble. "She called me worried that you might have changed things." "The house is mine, Dad. I never agreed to this arrangement." His sigh carried decades of disappointment. "Why must you be so difficult? Your sister is going through a hard time. You have more than enough. That pharmaceutical company of yours is worth millions." "Exactly," I said softly. "It's worth millions because I built it. Just like I bought that house, with my money, from my work. Family helps family, Alexandra. I thought I raised you better than this selfishness." I ended the call without responding. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by dreams of confrontation and scenes I had spent years trying to forget. Victoria borrowing my car in college and returning it with a crumpled fender, never apologizing. Victoria temporarily staying in my first apartment and leaving with my jewelry and my boyfriend. Victoria convincing Dad to invest his retirement savings in her businesses, promising returns that never materialized. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. I left Seattle at 5 a.m., driving south through rain that matched my mood. The security system had activated at 6 a.m. precisely, and my phone showed the house sealed and monitoring. Every entry point was armed, every room under surveillance. The cameras were hidden but comprehensive, covering angles that would capture any attempt at entry. I checked into the Cannon Beach Inn at 9 a.m., accepting the key from a cheerful desk clerk who commented on the weather. My room faced away from the ocean, but the Wi-Fi signal was strong. I settled into the desk chair, connected my laptop, and pulled up the security system's full interface. Multiple screens showed different views of my house. The front entrance with its custom driftwood door, the back deck overlooking the beach, the living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows, the kitchen with its imported Italian tile. Everything appeared exactly as I had left it 2 weeks ago during my last visit. The furniture I had carefully selected, the art I had commissioned from local artists, the kitchen equipment I had invested in during a phase when I thought I might learn to cook properly. Every item represented a choice, a moment of success, a reward for the exhausting work of running a pharmaceutical company. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Running a bit late. Traffic was worse than expected. Should be there by 2 p.m. So excited to finally have some peace and quiet." I stared at the message, noting her assumption that my house was already hers. No request, no negotiation, just certainty that what was mine would become hers because it always had. Dad had trained us both well, Victoria to expect, and me to provide. Except I had spent the last 7 years unlearning those lessons, building a company that answered to no one but myself and the patients who needed our medications. The morning crept forward. I worked on my laptop, reviewing production schedules and responding to emails from my team. Bethany sent updates on our formulation testing. Our chief financial officer forwarded projections for the next quarter. My assistant reminded me about a meeting with potential investors scheduled for Friday. Normal business continued while I waited for the personal crisis to unfold. At 1:30 p.m., a car appeared on my security feed. Not Victoria's car, but a moving truck. I leaned forward, watching as the truck pulled into my driveway. 2 men climbed out, followed by Victoria in designer athletic wear that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She gestured animatedly at my house, clearly giving instructions about where to place furniture. My hands tightened on the laptop. She had not only planned to move in, she had hired movers and brought furniture. This was not a temporary stay during a difficult time. This was a permanent takeover of my property. I pulled out my phone and started recording the security footage, creating a backup file that would survive any attempt to erase evidence. Victoria approached the front door, reaching into her purse for what I assumed was the old key. She inserted it into the lock and turned. Nothing happened. She tried again, jiggling the key with increasing frustration. The security camera captured her expression, shifting from confidence to confusion to irritation. She pulled out her phone. My phone rang seconds later. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. Declined. A text appeared. "Alexandra, the key isn't working. Did you change the locks? Very funny. Let me in now." I watched her on the screen, pacing across my front deck, phone pressed to her ear. She was probably calling Dad. The movers stood by their truck, looking uncertain. One checked his watch. They were paid by the hour, and this delay was costing someone money, probably Victoria, who likely did not have the funds to waste on extended moving services. Another text arrived. "This is ridiculous. Dad told you to cooperate. I'm calling a locksmith." I smiled grimly and opened a response. "That house is private property. Any attempt to gain unauthorized entry will be treated as criminal trespassing. I have comprehensive security monitoring, and law enforcement will be notified automatically." 3 dots appeared as she typed, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "You can't be serious. Dad gave me permission." "Dad doesn't own the house. I do. Leave immediately." I watched her face on the security feed as she read my message. The confusion transformed into rage. She strode back to the front door and pounded on it with her fist, shouting something I could not hear but could easily imagine. The movers exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with the situation developing before them. Victoria pulled out her phone again, and this time I answered Dad's call when it came through. "Alexandra Maureen, what is this nonsense?" His voice carried the tone that used to make me apologize for existing. "Your sister is standing outside in the cold, and you've changed the locks like a spiteful child?" "I'm protecting my property from unauthorized access." "She's your sister. I told her she could stay there. You have no right to deny her this basic kindness." "Actually, I have every right. It's my house. My name on the deed. My money that purchased it. After everything this family has done for you." "What has this family done for me, Dad?" I interrupted, watching Victoria gesticulate wildly at the movers. "Remind me. Was it when you gave Victoria my college fund because her business needed capital? Was it when you missed my graduate school graduation because Victoria was having a crisis? Was it when you told investors at my company launch that my success was due to good luck and family values you instilled?" Silence stretched across the line. On my screen, Victoria was now sitting on my front steps, head in her hands. The movers had retreated to their truck, probably deciding whether to leave. "You've become hard," Dad said finally. "Money has made you cruel." "No," I replied softly. "Boundaries have made me sane. Victoria needs to leave my property now, or I will call the police myself." I ended the call and watched the screen. Victoria remained on my steps for another 10 minutes, alternating between phone calls and staring at the door as if willpower alone could open it. The movers finally approached her, and I could see the conversation was not going well. One gestured at his watch, then at the truck. They needed a decision. Victoria stood abruptly and walked to the truck, reaching inside for something. She returned with a small bag, what looked like an overnight case. My breath caught. She was not planning to give up. She set the bag on the deck and circled my house, trying windows. Each window was locked, each one monitored. She tugged at the back sliding door that led to the deck. Nothing budged. I pulled up the security system's audio feed, activating the two-way communication through the doorbell camera. Victoria was back at the front door, phone in hand, probably texting Dad again. I pressed the speaker button. "This is your final warning, Victoria. You are trespassing on private property. Leave now, or law enforcement will be contacted automatically in 60 seconds. Her head snapped up, searching for the source of my voice. She spotted the camera and stepped directly in front of it. "You're really doing this?" she shouted. "You're really going to call the cops on your own sister?" "I'm really going to protect my property from someone who was never invited and refuses to respect clear boundaries. Dad invited me. He has every right. Dad has no rights to this property. None. Zero. This house is solely in my name, purchased with my earnings, maintained with my money. You were never given permission to stay here, and you certainly were never given permission to move in permanently with furniture." Victoria's face contorted with fury. "You think you're so much better than everyone else because you have money. You've always been like this, selfish and superior." I think I'm someone who worked for what I have and is tired of watching other people try to take it. The movers had climbed back into their truck, clearly done with whatever drama was unfolding. They pulled away slowly, leaving Victoria standing alone in my driveway with her overnight bag. She watched them leave, then turned back to the camera. "I have nowhere to go," she said, and I heard the shift in her tone. The anger had morphed into pleading, the manipulation technique she had perfected over 4 decades. "My marriage ended. I'm broke. I need time to figure things out." "You have so much, Alexandra. Can't you share just this one thing?" I watched her face on the screen, remembering 100 similar moments. Victoria asking to borrow money she never repaid. Victoria needing just a small favor that always cost me more than promised. Victoria explaining why her needs trumped mine, always backed by Dad's agreement that family meant sacrifice. Specifically, my sacrifice for her benefit. "You're not broke," I said calmly. "You received a substantial settlement from your divorce." "I know, because your ex-husband mentioned it when he called to apologize for anything Victoria might try to pull. He warned me you'd been talking about my beach house for months." Her expression flickered, caught in the lie. "You chose to spend that settlement on luxury goods instead of securing stable housing," I continued. "You chose to tell Dad a story that would make him pressure me. You chose to hire movers and plan a permanent takeover of my property without my consent. Those were your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What am I supposed to do?" she demanded, the pleading voice dropping back into anger. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You have options. You can rent an apartment with the money you still have. You can get a job and support yourself like the adult you are. You can stop expecting other people to subsidize your lifestyle choices." Victoria grabbed her overnight bag and hurled it at the front door. It bounced off harmlessly, falling onto the deck. She followed it with a string of curses, most of them variations on my selfishness and cruelty. I recorded everything, watching her rage play out across my security feeds. My phone rang again. Dad's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called twice more, then gave up. A text arrived minutes later. "I'm ashamed of you. Your mother would be heartbroken to see what you've become." That particular weapon had lost its edge years ago. My mother had died when I was 15. Too early to see me build anything. Too early to witness Victoria's pattern of destruction. Dad liked to invoke her memory whenever he wanted me to feel guilty. But the truth was that Mom had been the one person who encouraged my ambitions, who told me that taking care of myself was not selfish but necessary. Victoria made one final circuit of the house, checking every potential entry point. She tried the garage door, tested the windows again, even attempted to remove a screen to see if any window had been left unlocked. Every access point held firm. Finally, she returned to the front deck, collected her thrown overnight bag, and pulled out her phone. She ordered a rideshare, I assumed, because she stood there waiting for 15 minutes before a car arrived. Before she left, she turned to face the camera one last time. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "Dad will never forgive you. I'll make sure everyone knows how you abandoned family when they needed you most." "I'll take that risk," I replied through the speaker. "Goodbye, Victoria." She climbed into the rideshare vehicle and disappeared down the road. I watched until the car vanished completely, then leaned back in my desk chair and released a breath I had not realized I was holding. My hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and relief mixing in my bloodstream. The house remained secure, untouched, mine. The security system had documented everything: Victoria's arrival, her attempts at entry, her rage, her threats. Evidence existed now, concrete and irrefutable, proof that I had not imagined the patterns I had spent years trying to escape. The rest of Wednesday passed in strange calm that felt almost surreal. I remained at the inn, monitoring the security feeds and handling work emails, watching my house stand empty and protected. By evening, I drove down to a small restaurant near the beach and ordered fish tacos, eating slowly while rain drummed against the windows. My phone stayed silent. Dad did not call again, and Victoria sent no more messages. Thursday morning, I woke to 17 missed calls, all from Dad's number starting at 6 a.m. The voicemail indicator showed 6 new messages. I listened to them while drinking coffee from the inn's small breakfast area, watching locals and tourists navigate the gray morning. The first message was Dad's voice, tight with barely controlled anger. "Alexandra, call me immediately. Your sister spent the night in a hotel she cannot afford, and this is your fault." The second escalated. "I've spoken to your Aunt Patricia. She agrees this behavior is unacceptable. Family does not abandon family." By the 6th message, his tone had shifted to disappointment. "Your mother raised you better than this. I don't know what happened to the generous daughter I once knew." I deleted all 6 messages and called my attorney instead. Jeffrey had handled the purchase of my beach house and had been my legal counsel for the pharmaceutical company since its inception. He answered on the second ring. "I need to document a potential harassment situation," I said, explaining the previous day's events. Jeffrey listened without interruption, then asked pointed questions about the security footage, the text messages, and my father's calls. "You've done everything correctly," he finally said. "Your property rights are absolute. But Alexandra, be prepared for escalation. People who feel entitled rarely accept initial rejection gracefully." "What kind of escalation?" "Social media campaigns, family pressure, potential attempts to claim squatters' rights if she manages entry, accusations that could damage your business reputation. Your sister sounds like someone who fights dirty when cornered." I thanked him and ended the call, his warnings echoing in my mind. By noon, the social media campaign had begun. Victoria posted a lengthy message on her public accounts, carefully worded to paint me as a heartless corporate executive who had turned away her desperate sister during a vulnerable time. She mentioned my pharmaceutical company by name, suggesting that I valued profit over people, business over family. Comments flooded in, sympathetic strangers offering Victoria support and condemnation of my cruelty. She had always been skilled at presenting herself as a victim, and the internet provided an eager audience. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Several people tagged my company's official account, demanding explanations. Bethany called at 2 p.m. "Have you seen Victoria's posts?" "I'm watching them multiply. Our PR department is getting inquiries from journalists. They want statements about the pharmaceutical executive who abandoned her homeless sister. This could affect investor confidence right before our product launch." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of Victoria's manipulations expanding into my professional life. "Schedule an emergency meeting with PR and legal for tomorrow morning. I'll be back in Seattle tonight." "Alexandra, for what it's worth, those of us who know you understand what's really happening." Her support helped, but it did not solve the problem. Victoria had weaponized public opinion, turning my boundary setting into a scandal. I spent the afternoon documenting everything, screenshots of her posts, copies of all text messages, timestamps from the security footage. Jeffrey would need comprehensive evidence to counter any legal claims she might manufacture. By Thursday evening, Dad had recruited reinforcements. My Aunt Patricia called, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "Alexandra, dear, I'm worried about you. This obsession with material possessions is unhealthy. Perhaps you should speak to someone professionally?" "I'm protecting my property, Aunt Patricia. That's not obsession. It's common sense." "But Victoria is family. Surely you can find it in your heart to help her during this difficult transition." Victoria received $70,000 in her divorce settlement 3 months ago. She chose to spend it instead of securing housing. Those were her decisions. Silence stretched across the line. Aunt Patricia had not known about the settlement. Victoria's carefully constructed narrative of desperate poverty had not included that particular fact. "Well," Patricia said slowly, "I'm sure there's more to the story than I understand. But family is family, Alexandra. I hope you'll reconsider." Friday morning arrived with a new complication. I returned to Seattle overnight and walked into my office at 7 a.m. to find my executive assistant hovering with unusual anxiety. "There's someone waiting in the conference room." She insisted it was urgent and family-related. Victoria sat at my conference table, dressed in an elegant suit I recognized as expensive. She looked up when I entered, her expression shifting from determination to manufactured warmth. "Alexandra, I knew you'd see me if I came to your workplace. We need to talk, really talk, without all the technology and distance between us." "How did you get past building security?" "I told them I was your sister and it was an emergency. They were very understanding once I explained how worried I was about you." I pulled out my phone and texted building security, flagging Victoria as unauthorized and requesting her removal from the visitor list. Then I sat across from her, maintaining professional distance. "You have 5 minutes before I have security escort you out." Victoria's smile tightened. "That's how you greet your sister? After I drove all the way up here to reconcile? You drove up here to manipulate me in front of my employees. What do you want, Victoria?" "I want us to work together on this. Dad is devastated. You've torn the family apart over a house you barely use. Just let me stay there for 6 months while I get back on my feet." 6 months, Alexandra. Surely that's not too much to ask. "You plan to move in permanently. You hired movers with furniture." I was being optimistic, but I can compromise. 6 months, and I'll leave peacefully. You won't even know I'm there. I studied her face, seeing the calculation behind the pleading eyes. Victoria was negotiating, which meant she was desperate. The hotel costs were probably draining her remaining funds faster than anticipated. She needed my beach house not for peace and recovery, but for free luxury accommodation while she figured out her next move. "No." "No? Just like that? You won't even consider it?" "I don't negotiate with people who try to steal my property, then launch public campaigns to damage my reputation when theft fails." Victoria's pleasant mask cracked. "I didn't steal anything. Dad gave me permission. Dad doesn't own the house. How many times do I need to repeat that basic fact?" She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Fine. I tried to be reasonable. I tried to meet you halfway. But if you want war, Alexandra, I can give you war. You think your little pharmaceutical company is untouchable? I know people. I have connections. I can make your professional life very uncomfortable. Are you threatening me?" I kept my voice level, despite the anger building in my chest. "I'm promising you consequences. You can't treat family like this and expect no repercussions. Dad agrees with me. He's planning to revise his will, by the way. Thought you should know." She left then, striding out of the conference room with dramatic flair. I sat alone in the silence, processing her words. Dad's will had never factored into my calculations. I had built my own wealth, created my own security. Whatever he chose to do with his estate was his decision. But Victoria had played that card as if it were a devastating blow, revealing how little she understood about what actually mattered to me. The emergency PR meeting started at 9 a.m. My communications director, Thomas, presented analysis of Victoria's social media campaign. The story is spreading beyond her personal network. A few minor news outlets have picked it up as a human interest piece. Wealthy pharmaceutical executive versus struggling sister. They're framing it as corporate greed versus family values. "What are our options?" I asked. Jeffrey, who had joined via video call, leaned forward. "We could release a statement with facts. The property ownership, the divorce settlement Victoria received, the attempted unauthorized entry. But that might look defensive and could be spun as attacking a vulnerable woman." "Or," Thomas added, "we stay silent and let it blow over. These stories have short lifespans unless there's ongoing drama to feed them." "Victoria won't let it blow over," I said. "She needs the narrative to pressure me into capitulation. She'll keep adding fuel." Bethany spoke up from her seat near the window. "What if we focus on positive stories instead? The company's charitable work, our discount programs for low-income patients, your scholarship fund for women in science. We don't address Victoria directly, but we build a counter-narrative about your actual character. It was solid advice. We spent the next hour crafting a communication strategy that emphasized the company's values and my documented generosity without directly engaging Victoria's accusations. By the meeting's end, I felt we had a defensible position. But Victoria was not finished. Friday afternoon brought a new attack. She had contacted 3 of my major investors, requesting meetings to discuss concerns about leadership stability at my company. 2 politely declined. The third, Lawrence, called me directly. Alexandra, I received an unusual outreach from someone claiming to be your sister. She suggested you're under significant personal stress and it might affect your judgment. I wanted to hear your perspective. I explained the situation concisely, sticking to facts and documentation. Lawrence listened carefully. Sounds like family drama that has nothing to do with your professional capabilities, he said finally. I appreciate you being straightforward with me. For what it's worth, your track record speaks for itself. I'm not concerned. Thank you, Lawrence. But Alexandra, be careful. People who fight like this often don't stop until they've burned everything down. Protect yourself. His warning joined Jeffrey's in my mind. Victoria was escalating exactly as predicted, but I had not anticipated the sheer breadth of her attacks. She was not just fighting for the beach house anymore. She was attempting to destabilize every aspect of my life. Saturday brought a brief respite. I spent the morning at my Seattle apartment, catching up on sleep and trying to decompress. My phone remained relatively quiet until noon, when an unknown number called. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Alexandra? A woman's voice asked. My name is Jennifer. I was married to Victoria's second husband, Gregory. I hope you don't mind, but I tracked down your number because I thought you should know what you're dealing with. I sat up straighter. I'm listening. Victoria pulled this exact same routine with us. She moved into our house claiming temporary hardship, then refused to leave for 8 months. She ran up bills on our credit cards, borrowed our car, and damaged it. And when we finally got her out legally, she launched a social media campaign accusing us of cruelty. It nearly destroyed Gregory's consulting business. How did you eventually remove her? We had to get a formal eviction notice through the courts. Even with legal documentation, she made it a nightmare. I'm calling because I saw her posts about you, and I recognize the pattern. She's done this to multiple people. Your father enables it because he can't admit his daughter is manipulative. But you need to know. She won't stop. She'll keep pushing until something breaks. Jennifer's words confirmed what I had begun to suspect. This was not about the beach house specifically. It was about Victoria's lifelong pattern of taking what others had built, using family obligation as a weapon, and leaving destruction when resistance appeared. Did you ever document everything? I asked. The credit card fraud, the car damage, all of it? We have boxes of documentation. Gregory considered pressing charges but decided it wasn't worth the family fallout. But Alexandra, if you need evidence of her history, I'll send you everything we have. Someone needs to stop her. We spoke for another 20 minutes. Jennifer detailed Victoria's manipulation tactics, her lies to different family members to keep stories straight, her ability to charm while simultaneously plotting betrayal. By the call's end, I had a new email contact and a promise of documentation that would arrive by Monday. Sunday morning, Dad made his final play. He appeared at my apartment building unannounced, convincing the doorman to call up and request I come down. I found him in the lobby, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Really talk, not through phones or anger. We walked to a nearby coffee shop, settling into a corner booth. Dad ordered black coffee and stared at it for a long moment before speaking. Your mother used to say that I spoiled Victoria, he said finally. I never believed her. I thought she was just being hard on her firstborn. But lately I've been wondering if she was right. I waited, letting him continue. Victoria called me last night crying. She's staying with Patricia, who apparently mentioned something about a divorce settlement. I asked Victoria directly, and she admitted she received money. Quite a bit of money. She said she invested it in business opportunities. But when I pressed for details, she got defensive and hung up. She spent it on designer clothes and luxury hotels, I said. There were no business opportunities. Dad's hands tightened around his coffee cup. I've been making excuses for her for 4 decades. Every failed business, every broken relationship, every time she needed rescuing. I told myself she was just unlucky, just needed more support. But standing in your building lobby, I realized something. I don't even know what Victoria does with her time. I can tell you everything about your pharmaceutical company, your research, your goals. But Victoria? I have no idea what she actually does all day. The admission hung between us, heavy with years of unexamined choices. I sipped my coffee, waiting to see if Dad would follow this moment of clarity with action, or retreat back into comfortable denial. I owe you an apology, he said slowly. I've spent years asking you to sacrifice for your sister without ever questioning whether she deserved it. I've used your mother's memory as manipulation, which is unforgivable. Your mother would actually be proud of you, Alexandra. Proud of what you built. Proud that you set boundaries. I'm the one who should be ashamed. Why are you telling me this now? Because Patricia showed me messages Victoria sent to various family members. Different stories to different people, all designed to paint you as the villain and herself as the victim. She told Patricia the divorce settlement was only $20,000. She told your cousin Margaret that you stole her inheritance. She told me that you threatened her physically when she went to the beach house. None of it was consistent, and all of it was calculated. I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage from Wednesday, watching his face as he observed Victoria's rage, her attempts to break into my property, her threats to the camera. He watched in silence, his expression shifting from shock to resignation to something that looked like grief. She's my daughter, he said when the video ended. But she's also a stranger. I don't know this person who lies and schemes and manipulates. Or maybe I've always known and chose not to see. What are you going to do? Stop enabling her. Stop expecting you to compensate for my failures as a parent. Patricia has agreed to let Victoria stay for 1 month, but after that, she's on her own. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She's 41 years old. It's time she learned to support herself. We talked for another hour, carefully navigating decades of resentment and misunderstanding. Dad asked about my company, actually listening to my answers instead of waiting to redirect conversation to Victoria. He asked about my beach house, why I had chosen Cannon Beach, what the property meant to me. Simple questions he should have asked years ago, but never had. When we parted at the coffee shop door, he hugged me tightly. I know I can't fix the past, but maybe I can stop making the same mistakes in the future. I watched him walk away, processing the unexpected reconciliation. It did not erase years of favoritism and neglect, but it was something. A small crack in the pattern that had defined our family for so long. Monday arrived with Jennifer's promised documentation. She sent a massive file containing bank statements showing Victoria's credit card fraud, police reports from the car damage, court documents from the eviction process, and screenshots of Victoria's previous social media campaign against Gregory. The pattern was undeniable. Victoria targeted successful people, positioned herself as needy, then exploited access until forced removal required legal intervention. I forwarded everything to Jeffrey with a note. Prepare for worst-case scenarios. She's done this before and will escalate. His response came within an hour. Already drafting restraining order paperwork. Also, I've been researching her financial history. She's been sued by 3 different landlords for unpaid rent and property damage. Her credit rating is abysmal. She's desperate, which makes her dangerous. The work week proceeded with tense normalcy. My team prepared for the upcoming product launch, while I managed the dual challenges of company leadership and family warfare. Victoria's social media campaign had peaked and was beginning to fade as internet attention moved to newer dramas. The journalists who had inquired about statements had moved on when we declined to comment. Wednesday marked 1 week since Victoria's failed attempt to move into my beach house. I spent the evening in my Seattle apartment, reviewing security footage to ensure my property remained untouched. Everything appeared normal until I noticed something odd. A car had driven slowly past my house 3 times in the past hour, parking briefly down the street each time. I pulled up additional camera angles and zoomed in on the license plate. A quick search revealed the car was a rental. My phone was in my hand immediately, calling Jeffrey. "I think Victoria is planning another entry attempt," I said, explaining the surveillance I had observed. "Can I call the police preemptively?" "You can call the local Cannon Beach Police non-emergency line and request extra patrols near your property. Explain you're the homeowner, you're in Seattle, and you've documented previous unauthorized entry attempts by a family member. They'll likely increase presence in the area." I made the call, speaking with a patient officer who took notes and assured me they would monitor the situation. "We've seen this before," she said. "Family property disputes get messy. We'll keep an eye on your house." 2 hours later, my security system triggered an alert. Motion detected at the back deck. I pulled up the camera feed to see Victoria climbing over the deck railing, clearly having approached from the beach to avoid street-facing cameras. She was dressed in dark clothing, moving purposefully toward the sliding glass door. I activated the two-way audio. "Victoria, you are trespassing on private property. Leave immediately, or I will contact law enforcement." She jumped at the sound of my voice, spinning to locate the camera. When she spotted it, her expression transformed into pure fury. She marched to the camera and stared directly into it. "This is my house now. Dad signed papers giving me ownership. You can't stop me anymore." My blood ran cold. "What papers?" "Dad added me to the deed. He went to a lawyer on Monday and fixed your mistake. This house is half mine now, and you can't do anything about it." I was already calling Jeffrey, hands shaking as I navigated my phone. He answered immediately, and I explained Victoria's claim. "She's lying," Jeffrey said firmly. "Adding someone to a property deed requires the owner's signature, not a family member's permission. Your father cannot unilaterally change ownership of your house. She's bluffing to scare you into backing down." "You're certain?" "Absolutely certain. This is manipulation, not law. Tell her she has 60 seconds to leave, then call the Cannon Beach police." I returned to the security feed, where Victoria was now testing the sliding door's lock. "Victoria, Dad cannot add you to my property deed. He doesn't own the house. You're lying, and you're trespassing. You have 60 seconds to leave before police arrive." "You're bluffing," she shouted at the camera. "You won't actually call the cops on your own sister." I was already dialing the Cannon Beach Police emergency line, watching Victoria on my screen while explaining the situation to the dispatcher. The officer I had spoken with earlier must have flagged my address because the dispatcher's response was immediate. "We have units in the area. They'll be there within 5 minutes. She's testing windows now," I reported, watching Victoria circle my house searching for any weakness. "She's attempting to force entry. Ma'am, please stay on the line and continue documenting her actions." The police arrived in 3 minutes, 2 vehicles with lights, but no sirens. I watched through multiple camera feeds as 2 officers approached the back deck where Victoria was now attempting to pry open a window with what looked like a screwdriver. She did not notice them until one called out, identifying themselves as law enforcement. Victoria spun around, and I watched her expression shift rapidly through several emotions: shock, fear, then sudden tears. She dropped the screwdriver and covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with what appeared to be sobs. I had seen this performance before, the instant transformation into helpless victim. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she called out, voice breaking convincingly. My sister locked me out of our family property. I've been trying to get my belongings, but she changed all the locks. I didn't know what else to do. One officer approached her cautiously, while the other surveyed the property. Ma'am, the owner of this property called us. She states you don't have permission to be here. The owner is my sister, and she's being vindictive because of a family disagreement. Our father gave me permission to stay here. This is a family matter, not a police matter. I spoke through the doorbell camera's speaker, my voice calm and clear. Officers, I'm the sole owner of this property. I'm currently in Seattle but monitoring my security system. This woman is my sister Victoria, and she has no legal claim to this house. She attempted to move in last Wednesday without permission, and I denied her entry. She's now attempting forced entry, which I've documented on video. The officer looked up at the camera, nodding slightly. Ma'am, can you provide proof of ownership? I'll email copies of the deed, property tax records, and mortgage documentation to your department immediately. My attorney's contact information is Jeffrey Morrison at Morrison Legal Group in Seattle. He can verify everything. Victoria's tears intensified. This is ridiculous. She's my sister. Why are you treating me like a criminal? Ma'am, do you have documentation showing permission to be on this property? The second officer asked, circling back from his inspection of the attempted break-in points. My father gave verbal permission. He's part owner of the family. Is his name on the deed? Victoria hesitated. No, but then he cannot grant permission for access. The officer's tone remained professional but firm. Do you have keys provided by the actual owner? I have keys. Victoria pulled a key ring from her pocket triumphantly. See? I have keys to this house. Those keys don't work anymore, I said through the speaker. I changed the locks 3 months ago after discovering she had been entering my property without permission and using my belongings. The keys she's holding are obsolete, which is why she was attempting to pry open a window. The officer who had been examining the window frame spoke up. There are fresh marks here consistent with forced entry attempts. Ma'am, I need you to come with me to the patrol car while we sort this out. I'm not going anywhere. This is my family's property. Ma'am, you can come voluntarily, or I can place you under arrest for attempted breaking and entering. Your choice. I watched Victoria's face on the camera as reality penetrated her fantasy of ownership. The tears stopped abruptly, replaced by cold calculation. She was weighing her options, trying to determine which path offered the best outcome. I want to speak to my father, she said finally. He'll straighten this out. You're welcome to call him from the station, the officer replied. But right now, you need to leave this property. Victoria pulled out her phone, but instead of calling Dad, she took a photo of the officers. I'm documenting this harassment. My lawyer will be very interested in how you've treated me based on my sister's lies. Ma'am, please put your phone away and accompany us now. What happened next unfolded so quickly that I almost missed it. Victoria suddenly bolted, not toward the street, but toward the beach, apparently believing she could escape across the sand. The officers reacted immediately, one radioing for backup while the other pursued on foot. Victoria made it perhaps 50 yards before losing her footing in the soft sand and falling hard. The pursuing officer caught up quickly, and within moments Victoria was in handcuffs, screaming about police brutality and illegal arrest. I recorded everything from multiple camera angles, watching the scene play out with a strange detachment. This was my sister, the person I had grown up with, now being arrested for trying to steal my property. The second patrol car arrived, and backup officers helped escort Victoria to a vehicle. She was still shouting, her voice carrying across the beach. Alexandra, I know you're watching. This isn't over. You can't treat family like this. One officer approached the front door camera. Ma'am, are you still on the line? I'm here. We're taking your sister to the station for booking on attempted breaking and entering, trespassing, and resisting arrest. You'll need to come to Cannon Beach to provide a formal statement and your documentation. I can be there in 3 hours. That works. Ask for Sergeant Williams when you arrive. I was on the road within 15 minutes, throwing necessities into a bag and heading south through evening traffic. The drive gave me time to process what had happened. Victoria had not just failed again. She had escalated into criminal behavior, creating a record that would support any future restraining orders or legal action I might need. Jeffrey called halfway through my drive. I heard from the Cannon Beach police. Are you okay? I'm fine. Heading down to give a statement. I've already sent them all the documentation they requested. Property deed, records of Victoria's previous unauthorized entries, the security footage from last Wednesday. They're building a solid case for prosecution if you choose to press charges. I'm pressing charges. The words came out firm, certain. This has to stop, and apparently legal consequences are the only language Victoria understands. Good. I'll meet you at the police station. Don't sign anything or agree to anything without me present. The Cannon Beach police station was small, the kind of local department that probably dealt more with tourist complaints than property crime. Sergeant Williams met me in the lobby, a weathered woman in her 50s who exuded competent authority. Jeffrey arrived moments later, and we followed her to an interview room. Your sister is claiming this was a misunderstanding, Sergeant Williams began. She maintains that your father gave her permission, and she believes she had legal right to access the property. My father doesn't own any portion of the property, I replied, sliding documentation across the table. I'm the sole owner, as shown here. Victoria knew she didn't have permission, which is why she attempted forced entry rather than simply using keys. The keys in her possession don't work for your locks? Correct. I changed locks 3 months ago specifically because she had been entering without permission. We spent an hour reviewing evidence, walking through the timeline of events, and documenting Victoria's escalating behavior. Sergeant Williams took notes steadily, occasionally asking clarification questions. When we finished, she sat back in her chair. This is clearly not a misunderstanding. Your sister knew she didn't have access rights and attempted to circumvent your security through deception and force. The question is, how do you want to proceed? Full prosecution, I said. I want every charge possible filed and pursued. Even though she's family, especially because she's family. She's used that relationship as a weapon for years, and she needs to understand that actions have consequences. Sergeant Williams nodded slowly. We'll file charges for attempted burglary, criminal trespassing, and resisting arrest. The district attorney will contact you about proceeding with prosecution. Be aware that this will create a permanent record and could result in jail time if convicted. I understand. After the police station, Jeffrey walked me to my car in the parking lot. You know Victoria will use this to paint you as even more villainous. She'll claim you had her arrested out of spite. Let her. I have documentation, police reports, and witness statements. The truth is available to anyone who wants to look beyond her victim narrative. Your father called me earlier, Jeffrey said carefully. He wanted me to convince you to drop the charges. What did you tell him? That you're my client, not him, and that you're making the right legal decision. He wasn't happy, but he accepted it. I drove to my beach house finally, parking in the driveway I had watched Victoria invade twice now. The house stood peaceful in the evening light, untouched and secure. I walked through each room slowly, checking for any damage, any sign that Victoria's attempts had succeeded. Everything remained exactly as I had left it. My furniture, my art, my sanctuary intact. That night, I slept in my own bed while waves crashed against the shore outside. The security system stayed armed, monitoring for threats that might still come. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace settling into the spaces Victoria had tried to occupy. Thursday morning brought unexpected news. Dad called at 8 a.m., his voice careful and subdued. Victoria contacted me from jail. She needs bail money. And? I waited for the request, the pressure to help family despite everything. And I told her no. I told her that she created this situation through her own choices, and she needs to face the consequences. Patricia is also refusing to help. Victoria is going to have to use her remaining money for bail and legal defense. I'm surprised. The words felt inadequate for the magnitude of what Dad was saying. I should have done this years ago, decades ago. Your mother tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. I'm listening now, Alexandra. I'm sorry it took this long. After we hung up, I sat on my deck watching seabirds wheel across the morning sky. The air smelled of salt and possibility. My phone buzzed with messages from my team in Seattle. The product launch was proceeding perfectly. Early reviews were exceptional. Investors were pleased with initial market response. Life continued forward, despite Victoria's attempts to derail it. My company thrived because I had built it on solid foundations, not family obligations or borrowed success. My house stood secure because I had earned it and protected it with boundaries Victoria had never learned to respect. The weeks that followed Victoria's arrest brought a strange clarity to my life. The constant tension of waiting for her next attack dissolved, replaced by the simple rhythm of running my company and occasionally visiting my beach sanctuary. The legal process moved forward steadily. Victoria pleaded not guilty, claiming she had genuinely believed Dad's verbal permission granted her access rights. The district attorney, armed with my documentation and security footage, was unimpressed with her defense. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. He attended a product launch event in Seattle, staying afterward to tour the facility properly for the first time. He asked intelligent questions about our research and manufacturing processes, listened to my team members describe their work, and made no mention of Victoria's achievements or needs. It was the attention I had craved for years, arriving late but genuine. Your mother would have loved seeing this, he said, as we walked through the research labs where Bethany's team developed new formulations. She always said you had the determination to change the world. I wish I had believed her sooner. Victoria's trial was scheduled for early December. Her public defender contacted Jeffrey to discuss a plea bargain, guilty plea to criminal trespassing in exchange for dropped burglary and resisting arrest charges. The recommended sentence would be probation, community service, and a permanent restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me or my properties. It's a reasonable offer, Jeffrey said during our consultation call. You'd get legal protection without the uncertainty of a trial. What's your recommendation? Accept it. You've already won what matters: clear boundaries, legal documentation of her behavior, and protection going forward. Pushing for maximum punishment won't give you anything more valuable than what this plea provides. I accepted the plea bargain. Victoria would serve 200 hours of community service, attend mandatory counseling for boundary issues, and live with the permanent record of criminal trespassing. More importantly, the restraining order meant she could never show up at my home, my office, or my beach house again. Legal consequences enforced what family obligation never could. The day Victoria signed the plea agreement, I received an email from Jennifer, the ex-wife who had warned me about Victoria's patterns. I heard about the criminal charges. Gregory and I are considering reopening our case against her for credit card fraud. Your documentation and successful prosecution make it more likely we'd be taken seriously. Thank you for finally holding her accountable. I responded with encouragement and an offer to share any relevant evidence that might help their case. Victoria's web of victims was larger than I had realized, and each person she had exploited deserved the chance at justice and closure. By mid-December, my life had settled into a new normal. The product launch exceeded projections, securing another round of investor funding that would let us expand into additional therapeutic areas. I promoted Bethany to Vice President of Research, recognizing her years of dedicated work and brilliant contributions. My team gathered at a downtown Seattle restaurant to celebrate, toasting with sparkling cider and sharing stories about the challenges we had overcome together. To Alexandra, Thomas said, raising his glass, for building a company that actually gives a damn about patients, not just profits. To surviving family drama without losing your mind, Bethany added with a knowing smile. I raised my own glass, looking around at the people who had chosen to work with me, who respected what I had built, who understood that success required boundaries and principles. To all of us, to choosing the difficult right over the easy wrong. The week before Christmas, I spent 5 days at my beach house. The weather was cold and gray, rain intermittent, tourists sparse. Perfect conditions for solitude and reflection. I walked the beach each morning, watching waves reshape the sand, thinking about the year that had passed and the version of myself who had emerged from conflict. Victoria had tried to take what I built, using family obligation as justification for theft. She had failed because I finally understood something essential. Love without boundaries is not love but enabling, and generosity without reciprocity is not kindness but exploitation. Setting limits did not make me cruel. It made me sane. Dad called on Christmas Eve with news that Victoria had moved to Arizona, taking a job managing a retail store and renting a modest apartment with her own money. "She's complaining about the work and the heat," he said, "but she's actually showing up to her shifts and paying her own rent. It's the first time in years she's been entirely self-sufficient. Good for her." I meant it. Victoria needed to learn that survival required effort, not manipulation. Maybe she would figure it out. Maybe she would not. Either way, her choices were no longer my responsibility. On Christmas morning, I sat on my deck wrapped in blankets, drinking coffee as winter sun broke through clouds over the ocean. My phone held no demands, no crises, no family members expecting me to sacrifice myself for their convenience. Just quiet messages from friends, a video call scheduled with Dad for later, and the peaceful solitude I had fought to protect. Victoria faced the consequences she had spent years evading. The criminal trespassing conviction followed her into background checks, limiting housing options and employment opportunities. The restraining order isolated her from family members who might have helped her rebuild, forcing her to finally develop self-reliance she had never needed before. Her social media followers eventually realized her victim narrative had been constructed from lies, and her posts attracted criticism rather than sympathy. She discovered what I had learned young. The world rarely rewards manipulation once the truth comes to light. Looking back on my journey of protecting what was mine, I felt no guilt, only the quiet satisfaction of boundaries honored and justice served. I had chosen myself over family obligation, and in doing so, I had finally found the peace I deserved.